In this period, agency life has been put under lots of pressure. Pitching from home, with your daughter calling you because it's time to play together. It's not as easy like pitching in a super duper office. Doing an appraisal via screen, via video conference, separated by a screen. It's not like doing an appraisal or giving an appraisal face to face. But I believe that we have all learned much more than this. For instance, we have all learned to work around our own clock. Why, for example, an early bird person like myself has to devote the most productive part of the day being stuck in the rush hour traffic. There is no sense. I can easily organize my agenda differently, having the first video call before getting into the car, so maybe I can get into the car an hour later and avoid the horrible traffic jams that are common around all major cities around the world. And that one is not a detail. That one is a fundamental change that we can all learn. This one is something that is happening, is not just for leaders, it's happening for everybody. And this new agility and this new model will change for good the way we will work. Of course, don't get me wrong, there are things that are not negotiable. There are lots of things that we can do from remote, but some things are not negotiable. Major client presentations are not negotiable. Needs to be delivered in person because we are human beings. We are not just a bunch of pixels. Major pitches, made exactly like a major client presentation. I will always stress that all those kind of activities will be delivered in person. I want my Christmas party to be in person. I don't want a Christmas party via WhatsApp or something like that. No way. I want my annual convention to be a physical annual convention. And all sorts of things. But to summarize what we have learned in all this process, I can definitely say that as a CEO, now more than ever, our role is no longer the chief in commander, the man who decides what's good and what's wrong. We need to be much better at becoming a chief enabling officer, CEO, chief enabling officer, because our people have demonstrated a huge deal of responsibility, passion for the company, passion for the clients, passion for themselves and their colleagues. And this is something that really makes me proud of my agency over these very turbulent, unexpected and scary period that finally seems to be over. So 2020 will be a year to remember for good and bad reasons. We will definitely have a 21. So as I always say to my people, let's go through this 2020 together. Let's employ this time, use this time to be better and be ready to restart faster and get back at our usual growth that we have demonstrated to be able to deliver to our stakeholders and shareholders over the last 6 years. COVID entered my consciousness on January the 30th, when we had the first 2 cases of Chinese tourists diagnosed in Rome. It then became top of the agenda on February 20th, when we had the first outbreak in northern Italy. The day after, on February 21st, I clearly remember that we instructed all our employees to go home, take their laptop with them, because safety of our employees has always been number one. And that one was the beginning of unexpected, uncertain, scary times. And 6 months down the line, now we can maybe take some learnings with us and move forward. COVID situation now is much better in Italy. I recently spent 1 week holiday with my family in Sicily, and it was actually, everything was very well organized. You cannot enter in any kind of shop, even an ice cream shop or a newsstand, without wearing a mask. Most interesting, I noticed that because of COVID, actually some businesses like public beaches, for instance, they took a giant leap in terms of services. It's now possible to book your own spot. You actually pick up your own specific spot on a public beach, and you get a QR code online, and you access through your mobile a public beach, something which was literally impossible to foresee just a year ago. This experience has challenged the very basic foundation and assumption of modern society, people, and working environment. In all these 3 areas, I can definitely say that agility is the new black. As simple as that. As human beings, we have been flooded overnight by all sorts of emotions. But as business leaders, we need to remember that we own our emotions. They don't own us. It's up to us to control them. Emotions are key. I don't believe that as business leader is simply dry, number-driven person. Not at all. Emotions are crucial in our role. Are definitely crucial in our role. But emotions are useful because they tell us what we care about. In a world flooded of data, they actually can be considered our data entry point because they tell exactly what we care about. And overnight, everything has changed. And this is why it is crucial for business leader to be able to articulate and manage its emotion. Like every other person in the business, we have been facing different feelings in different moments, sometimes even during the same day. So that one is crucial. And as business leader, we tend to control everything. We need to be aware of everything that is going on, and we need to be accountable for everything that is happening. But as a human beings, we need to remember that we can only control the controllables.
Hi, this is Vivian from Wieden and cant in Shanghai. My first COVID-19 moment happened in late Jan when we were about to have our Chinese New Year holiday, which is like Christmas in the West. So we all flew back to our hometown to see our family. Then the lockdown happened and the public holiday was extended and then extended and further extended. And we started to realize that we were going to work from home for quite a long while. Most projects were on hold at that time, but we felt like we got to do something proactively. Otherwise, people got too stressful or like depressed, stuck at home watching online news 16 hours a day. So we had our team proactively doing strategic and creative ideas for client. We tasked our people to work on in-house project that we were too busy to do last year. And then one team initiated a project called You Can't Master Smile, because at that time everyone was required by law to wear a mask, and our neighborhood at that time was like also very empty and smileless because of the lockdown. So we want to do something simple and cheerful to bring the smiles back. We sneak back to our office and turn our gym into an ad hoc photo booth where we photograph our people. And then we photoshopped and swapped their smile on top of each other's protective mask to create this happy visual. We also cover our building windows with all these pictures and then turn our whole building into a giant outdoor billboard. As we are just across a coronavirus hospital, we hope that we can cheer up the patient there. Hindsight, that was the best thing we have done during that very stressful time. First of all, our people were happy that they could do something for others during bad time. It also distracted us from worries and horrifying news. It also turned our neighborhood, our neighborhood really loved it. Some small shops and restaurants joined us. Then like some local dumpling chain store joined us. And then some brands like Gap and Bose and Alibaba also joined us. The hashtag eventually, like the hashtag of "You Can't Mask a Smile," eventually reached over 1 million on Weibo, which is the biggest Chinese social media platform here. It has like became a movement that we didn't plan for it at all. So what's going on now? We are back to the office for 3 months, and life in Shanghai and most of China is almost back to normal now. Shops and restaurants are all open, business resumed, local production came back, and everyone is trying to chase back that 6-month speed bump we just got over. So luckily, we are getting busy again. What we have learned from this experience is that our creativity and productivity didn't drop during the lockdown. To our surprise, we actually got a lot done because we got a lot more focus working at home. It makes us like look at our working space and wonder, is our open office too open? Shall we build more focus area? When people want to concentrate, it can like block out distraction. Shall we let more people work from home, or at least make it flexible for people to choose in the future? Also, some of our creative directors are right now still stuck overseas, as China hasn't opened its gate yet. However, the fact that they managed to work remotely with their team here and even directors and production houses across the world completely open our mind to how flexible a creative and productivity process could be. All these learnings inspire us to evolve in a new way of working, which supports our people to work and present and produce in hybrid ways, whether we are from home, from our office, from the balcony of our parents' house, or from overseas. It is almost certain that the second wave will hit, and by that time, we will be much more ready for it. That's what we believe in. Thank you.
It was early January to mid-January when COVID started coming into my consciousness. It was an unusual time in Australia, which is where I'm based, because we'd just gone through a Christmas of devastating bushfires all the way up the East Coast, and they'd continued into January. So there was a lot going on in our environment at that time. But I particularly remember probably by mid-January that the news coming out of China and thinking about how that was going to affect us. And then we started to see cases in Australia and New Zealand as well. During February, the way in which our business reacted to that was to look at the different parts of the business that we felt were perhaps going to be challenged if we did have to go down into a lockdown situation, and looked at the obvious ones across the creative agencies and digital agencies, which were production and studio. We put together a task force, and one person led that from one of the agencies and brought all the production managers and directors together. They looked at process, technology requirements, and what we would need to do to solve for them. We also took that same method with our data leads and our investment leads across media. So that happened throughout February, and then we got into March, and those first 2 weeks of March were really, really intense. That's when it all started to ramp up. We were really lucky at Publicis because in the end of 2019, we'd actually launched our flexibility approach called Publicis Liberty. And this was a flexibility approach based on 6 behaviours. So the behaviours were trust one another, set your own boundaries, communicate effectively, focus on outputs, use tech to your advantage, and we saw a lot of that through COVID. That was on steroids. And also the last one, which was we're all different, which I think is really, really important to remember. So we had that foundation, and that was a massive organisational change with training from senior leaders down to every person across Publicis Group in ANZ. We had toolkits made ready to go, and we had about 40% of staff accessing Publicis Liberty in the first half of this year. So we walked into COVID with that as a really solid foundation. So when it got to, it was the week beginning 17th of March is when we mobilised everyone to start working from home. And we did that within 3 days. So I think we surprised ourselves of how smooth that process went. Pretty much that weekend, the New Zealand government went into strict lockdown. So they went down into a lockdown where you could only leave the house if it was for essential, school, no kids in schools. So it was a lot more restrictive than the Australian lockdown, where people could still move around. We could go and get takeaway food or coffee. And so there was quite a marked difference. So we were really watching New Zealand very carefully and communicating daily with our team there on what we would be doing. They're in a much better place than us. So if we look now to how the health situation of COVID is across our region, it's really a mixed bag. So you've got New Zealand who's pretty much eradicated COVID. So the few cases they do have are from returning travellers in quarantine. And really, they're able to be back at work. So we've opened the offices. We have 90% of staff back. Some of them are working blended, but most of them are coming into the office at least some point during the week. And then you look to Australia, which is different depending on where you live in Australia. So in our Melbourne offices, we haven't been able to go back to work because they've had another surge of COVID cases. So they've gone back down into lockdown. In Sydney and Brisbane, we've opened up our offices to those who want to voluntarily come back into the office. And I would say we have about 15 to 20% of staff. As we speak, there are clusters showing up around New South Wales, which is the state in which Sydney's in. So we're bracing ourselves for what that means next. When we're looking at rethinking the way we're going to work and how we work going forward, I think what's really important is separating out the during COVID period and the post. During COVID, there is a heightened level of anxiety and fear, which is completely understandable. People's lives are at stake, their family, their friends. Post-COVID, once we are there, it's a different state. It's a different emotional state, and people's choices will be different. So I think when we're looking at what our Publicis Liberty version 2 is and how that evolves, that's something we're putting that filter over it, definitely. There's probably 4 things that I think we definitely want to make sure we incorporate. Pretty much a week into going into lockdown and shutdown and working from home, we created something called Publicis Bench. And this was off the back of Artur Sadun, our global CEO, really asking us to look inside Publicis for talent during this period and keeping the jobs inside Publicis and really protecting our people and our jobs. So we created Publicis Bench, which enabled us to use staff from different agencies across Publicis Group in ANZ to work on different projects and different jobs across the group. This was hugely successful, so successful that it was picked up by Publicis Group and spread globally across the different regions, and saved thousands of jobs across the group, and locally in our market close to 100 jobs by using Publicis Bench. The event that's really solidified Publicis Bench has been the rollout of Marcel. For those of you who don't know, our global CEO Artur Sadun launched Marcel, which is a connected platform for our people, back in 2017. We have now launched it out into most markets, and we have at this stage about 60,000 of our staff connected. One of the many features of Marcel is Marcel Gigs. So similar to Publicis Bench, it enables you to put opportunities up, whether that's a short-term opportunity, whether it's a long-term job, and our staff across Publicis Group globally get to access that. Now, I just think this is a real benefit that we've seen, that we already had in motion, but I think that COVID has helped break down those bias, those habits and those behaviours that may have stopped this happening before. So it's broken down. There are no borders between geography. And what that is doing, it's bringing diverse thinking to our client work. It's giving opportunities to our people to work on jobs and thinking from different parts of the world. And that's something that's absolutely here to stay. We had art directors and copywriters from New Zealand working on jobs in Australia and vice versa. Currently, we have someone from Digitas New York working on a project in Sydney, Australia. So it's really exciting for our people, and I think it's really exciting to really embrace using different people with different skills, background, to bring ideas, across the organisation and to our clients. So that's definitely one that we'll absolutely keep. I think the other one that we found really was a benefit to our staff and really effective, and I think brought together the connectiveness, was communication. And again, this came from the top down. The global CEO every fortnight would get us all together across our different regions, and we had the opportunity to ask questions, and Artur kept us informed of what was happening on a group level and giving us direction and thought leadership around what we could possibly be doing. And that was really valuable to us. We were doing that on a market level as well with all the CEOs from across our group. We're a very connected group anyway, around the power of one, but it really helped heighten that. And we're doing those twice a week. And then we were doing 3 weekly ones across the whole group. And we decided very early on that we wanted this to be really informative, and we wanted to share all the information we had to our people. And it really empowered them. And in a time of craziness where people didn't feel like they had control over anything, they actually knew what they could do to help. And I think that's made a massive difference to us as organisations and to our agencies, and we've all really bound together as one and united to get through this pandemic. So they're some of the things that I would definitely be looking at, and we're definitely looking at putting into our way of working going forward. I think there's one thing that's really interesting when we're looking at flexibility and working from different places. We've all worked out we're really productive when we work from home, less distractions if you've got the right environment, of course, and we're able to produce great work for our clients. We're able to connect as teams and collaborate. What we're looking at now, though, is what's the opportunity costs of those organic, spontaneous conversations that we had as humans connected in our agencies, on our floors, in our offices, and what's been lost through that. And that could be an opportunity conversation with a client after everyone else has left the room. It could be asking for someone's feedback around a talent. It could be two people coming together with different ideas and creating that magic. And I think that magic in our industry is so important, and it's that connection that actually draws people to our industry. And I think we can't forget that. And how do we keep hold of that in this new world and this new way of working? How do we make sure that we're able to harness and create the environment where people can still come together? Because I think there's massive opportunities in that, and I think that's where a lot of the inspiration in what we do and a lot of the thinking and the proactive, innovative ideas and new ways of doing things comes from. It's that personal connection, and I think that's something we have to be really careful not to lose. And so how do we build that into the way we work going forward?